After 7 months of grueling play, injuries, game-winning baskets, highs, lows, surprises, disappointments, it's all come down to this. This final standings which determines which teams will match up in the NBA playoffs. And for me, 24 hours to predict who will win the NBA championship. But what if I told you that we could use historical data to filter which teams truly have a shot at winning it all? What if I could create a formula that could see which teams are pretenders and which ones are the real deal? Well, I've done that. Kind of. And the answer may surprise you. If we took every single NBA team that won a championship since the inception of the league in 1946 to present day 2024, are there any common traits that all of these teams share? Well, the answer is yes and no. Speaking generally, every team that has won an NBA championship has had really good offense and really good defense. But that's obvious. The real question is, are there any specific stats? And here's where the filtering begins, because the most predictive stat of whether a team will win a championship is their seeding. Specifically, being a top 3 seed in their conference. Simple as that. In the 76 championships that have ever been played, a whopping 74 were won by a 3rd seed or higher. The only teams to have accomplished this feat were the 1995 Rockets, and before that, the 69 Celtics, who played in a time when Nixon was president, the Beatles were still releasing music, and Scooby-Doo had just aired its first episode. So without even having to take any extra glances, I'm going to remove the Cavaliers, Magic, Pacers, 76ers, Heat, Bulls, Hawks, Clippers, Mavericks, Suns, Pelicans, Lakers, Kings, and Warriors out of any predictions. Don't get me wrong, nothing is decided until the season's over. But we're working with real tight numbers here, and it would take something historical for a sub-3 seed to win a championship. So that narrows us down to 6 teams: the Thunder, Nuggets, Wolves, Celtics, Knicks, and Bucks. Each of these teams demonstrated excellence in the regular season and have the capabilities of making a serious run at the title. But how do we narrow them down? In 1988, Michael Jordan won his first MVP. 3 years later, he began an unprecedented run of championships where he won 6 out of 10 championships in the 90s, firmly establishing himself as the GOAT. In fact, it seems that having an MVP caliber player on your team seems to be a relative constant among championship teams, because out of the 32 years since that first championship, 30 of them have had an MVP winner on their roster. Some of these MVPs were no longer in their prime. Shaq in 06, Garnett in 08, and yet, it's not a coincidence that these winning teams have an MVP, because when the pressure is on, the clock is ticking, and your team needs a basket, having a guy who can elevate to that next level may just be the difference between a championship parade or a peaceful vacation. Of the previous 6 teams mentioned, only the Bucks and the Nuggets have an MVP on their roster, and I don't think it's a coincidence that they're the only 2 teams to have won one before. Here's another interesting stat suggested from a Reddit user. Most players who lead their team to a championship are 26 years old or above. Any exceptions to this rule occurred only when there was a complementary veteran who had years of championship experience. Magic and Kareem, Kawhi and Duncan, Wade and Shaq. The teams who fit that criteria this year are the Knicks, Celtics, Bucks, and Nuggets. Let's dig deeper. In the past 20 years, 18 out of 20 teams that have won a championship had a top 10 defensive rating. The only outliers consisted of teams who have players literally in the top 15 of all time. The teams who fit that criteria are everyone but the Bucks, who rank an abysmal 19th. So if we reanalyze these 6 teams, these criteria paint a clearer picture about the championship. The Bucks are an offense-heavy team who have an MVP caliber level player in Giannis, but their defense is nowhere on par with that of a championship level defense. The Timberwolves are a solid number 1 seed, but their star player is a guy who just reached legal drinking age and still needs time to develop into a championship winning level. The same goes with the Thunder. Super talented team, but lacks the experience that past champions have demonstrated. Even when a young Tim Duncan won his first championship, he had former MVP David Robinson by his side. The Thunder are just too raw. In fact, the Celtics and Knicks also suffer from this problem, although not toward the extent of the other teams. The Celtics have the best record in the NBA. They have an ultra-talented lineup in Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Porzingis, Holiday, and White. They have finished top in true scoring, a stat that correlates immensely with playoff success. They're number 1 in offensive rating and 2 in defensive rating, stats that should make them clear and obvious favorites for the title. And yet, throughout the modern NBA, there are many instances of teams who don't dominate the sheets like the Celtics winning the title. The 22 Warriors had a bottom half offensive rating. The 98 Bulls and 2010 Lakers were both bottom half in true shooting. But what both the Celtics and Knicks don't have is a GOAT level superstar. A player who is or has been the best player in the league. A player who can crack any defense, score at historically efficient rates, elevate their teammates to new levels. And so, without further ado, I present to you your 2024 NBA champions. The Nuggets check all the boxes. A top 10 offensive and defensive rating. A number 2 seed. Championship and playoff experience. One of 36 coaches to ever win an NBA championship. And most importantly, a man who can drop a triple-double without breaking a sweat. I'm calling it. Nikola Jokic and the Denver Nuggets will win the 2024 NBA championship. Any other result would have to break a historical trend in the modern NBA. Let's not overthink it. Anyway, that's all I got for now. Obviously, this method of predicting the champions is very imperfect, and depending on what we see in the playoffs this year, it could be tweaked for future seasons. I hope you enjoyed, and thanks for watching.